Do you guys hear that?
Is that boss music?
Go naked and just go with the sword, and that's it.
What do I do with all this?
It says it in the title.
I'm a slut for roguelites.
Hello, and welcome back to the Unearthing Games Podcast. I'm your lead excavator, Nick, and today I'm joined by Jacob.
Howdy, how's it going?
And we have a special guest today, our brother, Phill.
Hi, happy to be here.
We're happy to have you on, man. I know we've talked about you enough on this podcast. You've already been here in spirit. So, figured it's about time we let you come on and defend yourself.
One of the things you learn as the oldest child is that you live rent-free in the heads of your siblings. As they strive in your shadow.
Either through trauma or kind thoughts. I don't know. One of the two.
That's right.
Or some combination.
Better to be feared than loved.
Yeah.
I want to be afraid of how much they love me. Something like that.
They love me. But so I know we've already talked about you a whole bunch on this podcast, but I figured it's probably best if we give you a chance to actually drive your own narrative, Phill. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
I appreciate it. To set the record straight then. Yes. I'm Philip. Let's see. Got into gaming when I was 5 years old, and my dad came home with an NES, so I'm not the oldest gamer out there. There are older gamers, but I'm close in this company at least. Super Mario Brothers, or the original, I should say, Mario Brothers, was where you cut my teeth, and been playing through every system since, and opened the board gaming world probably about 10 years ago, and have developed the hobby and spent an obscene amount of money, I think my wife would say. But,
I think we would all say.
But, also raising the next generation of gamers. I got 3 Rugrats here at home, which cuts into my gaming habit in very frustrating ways, but it's necessary so that we can have more.
Read, they'll be able to participate more. So
That's right.
Mm-hmm. It'll be a fun time to include everybody.
Yep.
I'd say that's going to be the weird day when I can start beating your daughter at board games. Just feel like, oh no, I made my niece cry. Should I feel bad? It's like, I won.
No.
I don't know. She's pretty
bright.
Don't
let them win. Don't let them
She might
let
make
them
you
win.
cry.
I'm not used to winning, and neither will she.
And don't you forget it.
Anyway.
But yeah, let's say we're really glad to finally have you on, Phill. I guess as per custom. So now you're gonna tell us about your top 5 board games and video games in I guess whichever order you want. No specific format, say. So
Sure.
Go ahead and run with it.
Okay. Oh gosh, so many games. Yes, in no particular order, because I'm slightly OCD and would naturally expect it to go in some kind of ascending or descending. This is no particular order because there are so many games on my list. I chose to go more genre focused. So thinking about board games. So I'm a huge fan of the high density, high table, takes you days to play, table hog, instruction manual, like a novel, games. They are really what sucked me in because I'm high detail, micro, break it down kind of guy, as I think y'all might have indicated. So the game I'm going to talk about for the marathon table hog category is Star Wars Rebellion. I'm a huge fan of the Star Wars IP. You're going to see Star Wars repeated, I think, a couple of times, perhaps in my lists, or certainly mentioned. And incidentally, for you Unearthing gamers, I'm a huge fan of the old Star Wars PC game, Star Wars Rebellion PC game, which did not age well, but I still pick it up from time to time. But this game does a really great job of capturing that feel. It's an asymmetric Empire versus Rebellion. Very, very different, 2 very different sides to play, and they battle it out for the Galactic Civil War, and you can reenact some of your greatest moments in your own twisted sort of way. But this game is really, really wonderful game to play. It will take 3 or 4 hours minimum, even once you're probably in it. And it will take a huge table. I have a special table that I bought so that I could play games like this. Your average kitchen dining room table will not support it. But it's completely worth it. Fantasy Flight did an incredible job with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember the first time you brought that I think you took it to like summer vacation or something one time when you brought it and you opened the box and all the miniatures are just so well put together. I mean, when you actually have like a full-blown little Death Star that you get to put on the board to move around as the Empire, I mean, how can you not love that, you know?
Just building a fleet of little plastic Star Destroyers.
That's it. You see your little Star Destroyers go down the construction track, and then you put them out. The quality of the Fantasy Flight games is really great, and the Star Wars, this one is no exception. So,
yeah,
right, yep.
And it's a really fun way for you to kind of go and, like you said, you can kind of live out your favorite Star Wars moments, but it's more like you're kind of writing your own Star Wars narrative. Right. Like, I think I remember the last time we played, I think I was the Empire, and I thought your Rebel base was on Kashyyyk, and so the Death Star showed up, and we tried to Yavin 4 that guy. So, but,
that's right.
Yeah.
No, it always seems that every time I play Phill because Phill always picks the Rebellion because he has to be the good guy, which is fine because I love playing as the Empire. But it always appears that it's always role playing the Empire speedrunning defeat.
Defeat.
And I don't know.
I don't know, man. That kind of begs the question where it's like, was the Empire really the bad guy? I mean, it's like, you know, he acts like the Rebellion was the right side of this thing. I was like, were they though? I mean, I don't know.
You can tell your own story. You really can. And,
right.
Yeah, it's really great. It does tend to be a game that I bring along to places, as you indicated, and then stare longingly at because no one wants to play it with me, or no one will let us play and take over the table. But it's happened enough times.
It's almost like we have to schedule dedicated time to go and play it, because if you bring it to vacation, everyone's like, well, we could play these other games that only take 30 minutes instead of 3 hours. You know,
that's right.
You do have to kind of plan a day around playing Star Wars Rebellion.
Now, fun fact: I played this with my brother-in-law once. Y'all know John and his. We managed to get 2 games in a day. One, it's like a round of golf. It's like 9 holes at the beginning. We got through, or we did an 18 hole in the beginning and then an 18 at the end. After lunch, and we started after breakfast, and we ended the last game as dinner time was approaching. So you can get 2 games in a day if you go hard.
So it could take a while.
Yeah.
All right. So Star Wars Rebellion. So that's your marathon table hog.
That is my marathon table hog category.
What's your next guy?
So let's see. For my mid-range entry gateway drug game, I've got Settlers of Catan, which I think you guys might have mentioned, but I know it's a huge favorite to our gaming ecosystem that we all participate in. Mm-hmm. Not the very first game that we got involved in, but it was pretty early in the world as we picked up the board gaming, and this game is just so pleasant to play. It's easy to set up. It's easy to learn. It's easy to get someone new into the board game habit because it's just so addictive. Mm-hmm. And
it's really pleasant.
I cannot wait to see the data on whether Erica actually wins every time we play or not. I wouldn't doubt it.
I was about to say it's really pleasant until the sheep baron.
The sheep baron. I'm collecting the data.
It.
What is that?
That's it.
BG Stats, the app.
Yep.
Collecting the information, and we're going to have that deep data that tells us who actually wins more often.
Oh man, we're going to have pie charts? Oh, this is going to be great.
It has pie charts. Data. Granted, we've only had like 6 entries in it so far, but still.
Oh Lord.
Now, if you need a game to enter into this habit, you cannot do better really than Settlers.
And I think, like you said, this was definitely not the first board game our family ever got into, but I would say this is probably our gateway drug into the modern board games. I think I mentioned that in the podcast previously, was that before we all played the Hasbro Mattel stuff, Monopoly,
we're gonna get
and all
there.
That jazz.
We're gonna get there. I'm old enough and pretentious enough to not allow us to go without nodding to the classics, but
right. Well, and it seems the classic mid range is what we tend to play most anyway.
Yeah, I think our groups. On average, our group's favorite is games that take 45 minutes or less, generally.
Yeah.
That way we can at least get multiple rounds of things in an afternoon kind of thing. So,
right.
Yeah.
And
Catan is that. It's an easy 30 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite so. Settlers of Catan.
So,
let's see.
What you got next?
Number 3 in my classics category, and this is actually, I think, what I would consider my gateway drug to board games completely. And it's not even mine. It's my dad got us into it because we hear stories of him playing in college. So yeah, and that's Risk. So everybody probably knows Risk. By today's standards, it's not, terribly complex or even terribly well designed. But there's a whole Risk-sized whole space in my heart that it will always occupy for my world conquering, hours long, army massing, card caching, family destroying, battle royale of a game. Risk is what, again, the theme caught me. There are other fun ones out there, Monopoly, of course, being another favorite of mine, but the world domination mechanic just caught me as a young kid, and I loved it. And so anytime there's a conquest style game, I'm always right there. And then that harkens back to the days of Risk.
So. I think that really explains a lot as far as where you got this love for table hog games. Because, if you get 4 to 6 people playing Risk, you dominate that entire table.
Yeah.
That's right.
I could see
that.
And
also there's so many different variants of Risk. You want to play sci-fi, you go for Risk 2110, 2105, or whatever it was.
Isn't there a Risk Axis and Allies one now? There's like a World War II Risk. There's a bunch of different ones. There's that one-shot.
There's every flavor.
Risk Legacy. So.
There's I have Halo Risk, which we've seen our table a few times. If you like your theme, but yeah, and I think the interesting thing about Risk, when you think about it today, though, in the light of the way games are designed now, Risk, you can really see glaringly some of the design issues that today's games have started to overcome, right? Risk, number one, no one ever wants to play Risk because it takes forever to have your turn, and that's something that a lot of newer games try and overcome. It's kind of viewed as a flaw, right? If you take a turn and then it takes an hour to get back around to you, that's hard, and you're nothing much for you to do other than defend. That's a tough deal. And
it's not like you can really plan a whole lot in Risk.
Right.
It's what? You can attack territories. That's right. What you can do. So you don't have a lot to think about between turns.
Definitely. And then, of course, the other one is player elimination, right? That's one we've kind of come to understand being a difficult, because it's no good on a game that takes 3 or 4 hours. It sucks if you're the first player to drop out in the first hour. You don't have much else to do. So it makes it tough. It's a game it's a good example of a game like Catan, designed around it, because a player in Catan can be in the game basically, even if they're getting beat, even if someone's running away with it, you're still kind of in it. There's always something to do, and you could still pull it out. A good roll, the right sheep and brick combo, and you could get back in it. So there's the player elimination mechanic is something I think a lot of modern games try and avoid. But again, there's always a world domination sized place in my heart for Risk, and so that one will always be in my closet.
Well, it's always we need those games to show us how far we've come in the board game world.
That's it.
The whole, if you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So someday, in decades from now, we'll have some person who designs this brand new game that's basically Risk because they never played Risk,
Right.
And so,
respect the classics, respect your elders. That's what you got to do. So that's why it's on my list.
It's definitely a really good one. I really like it.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Number 4, and this one I think might have been one of our first ones, at least into the novelty board game hobby as it is today, and that's Battlestar Galactica. So I got sucked into this for the theme, huge sci-fi nerd, and the reimagined Battlestar Galactica with Katie Sackhoff and Jamie Bamber, and the redo was just an incredible TV show. I'll fight you if you don't think so.
No, it's really good.
And this board game captures that theme so well. For those who have never gotten to play it, I highly recommend it. It is a wonderful combo of cooperative resource management and the sort of hidden role, or I think, as I've heard maybe Erica describe it, as the lying games.
Social deceptions.
Social deception. There you go. There's your
Yeah.
politically correct way of talking about it.
Well, there's a whole genre of game styles built around that. So
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, you got werewolf, you got
That's it.
resistance. We've played games that are
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot like
it's
that.
almost
But
like our
Battlestar
family enjoys
Galactica.
lying to each other.
It's
Okay.
I'm not sure what it says about us, but it is great. And again, for those familiar with or for those unfamiliar with the theme, right? It's a team of players trying to survive with their space fleet, and among you are hidden robot imposters who are attempting to destroy you and defeat you from within. And so sussing out who the imposters are is a key part of the game. I think we all remember this one. This one's got a special place for all of us because my wife, who professes to be so tired of this and so over it, never fails to be the one who backstabs us into defeat. And she does it in such fine fashion. I'm not sure what it says about me that I married such a deceptive woman, but she is wonderful at these games and never fails to lull me into a false sense of security before beating me senseless in a game like this. But again, it's one of the reasons she's great.
Well, and then there's the one that we all had where it was Mom's first time playing.
And she doesn't play board games.
She's just like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't understand how the game works. And she comes back and she's the Cylon. She's like, I knew it from the beginning.
That's right.
I was going to
from
destroy
the first
all
turn
of
of the
you.
game, she was the bad guy, and she knew it, and she...
And we're all just
Yep.
like, Mom, you were being so sweet.
Yeah.
Don't blow up the ship. There was that
Again,
one.
not sure what it says about us, but it is a great game. It's a good combo of a lot of different neat mechanics, and again, it captures the theme of the show so well. The artwork and the materials or the components just top notch, and they have a mountain of expansions we've never really gotten through that sort of track the evolution of the TV show. And yeah, it's a great combination of theme and mechanic and just really great social, really great stories from our game table on that one for me. So Battlestar Galactica, try it.
That's definitely one that will always... It's another one that you think you bring it around a lot, and it gets looked at, but then everyone's like, that's too stressful. We don't want to do that.
I was about to say, it's
Yeah,
like
it takes a while.
a marriage almost ended, and like we don't want to go through that again.
That's right.
Such
That's right.
betrayal. But yeah, so that is definitely a really good one. I think, like you mentioned, the expansions followed the show. That's because this one dropped, and the show had only been on for like 2 or 3 seasons, right?
I don't think the show was finished when it dropped. And they slowly did. There's an expansion basically for every season now. Like if you consider the base game for season 1, the first expansion brought in the other Battlestar. Spoiler alert. The third one took you to the
old show.
That's right. The third one, exactly. The third one took you to the colony where you had to escape, and the fourth one, took you to, finally reaching Earth. And it's, I've seen some exceptionally ambitious people on the internet develop mechanics to string them together into a series of games that you have to play to survive, but I've never been masochistic enough or ambitious enough to...
Well, that might be something
try it.
I've really become interested in us. I want to get our group to try out a lot of the legacy games, where I think Gloomhaven comes to mind, where like the stuff you do every session carries over to the next session, but then once you're through it, and you've basically spent the box,
Right.
I think if
basically
our
this-
group could get into that, then maybe we could handle something like a stringed together story over multiple sessions. It'd almost be like us playing Battlestar D&D.
Isn't that just sounds like D&D with extra steps?
With robots, man. With robots.
And
I mean, I can make
spaceships.
D&D with robots. This is all possible. D&D is just imagination, man. I can use 5e rule books for sci-fi. This is fine.
There you
Yep.
go. You replace crossbows with laser rifles, and you're all set.
Dude, there's a mechanic. I've been flipping through the DM's guide. There's a mechanic for that. But
Gosh.
anyway,
Yeah,
story.
so
so Battlestar Galactica, and then what's your last one?
So number 5 is in the co-op and app-driven category. I have XCOM, the board game. So I'm a huge fan of the XCOM series. The reimagining that they dropped a few years back, reimagined PC game, Xbox game, was just a great success. I was not on the PC at the time that the really old XCOM came in. So if you have any listeners that are truly elder gamers, they'll probably scoff at me, but I'm a huge fan of the more recent XCOM 1 and XCOM 2, War of the Chosen. Those video games are just tremendously helpful or tremendously fun to me, and you'll see them reappear on my video game list. But this board game really does a great job of catching some of the feel of that game and creating a really cool cooperative world. If you're tired of being super competitive or family destroying, well, then join up with your family members and let this computer come and kick your butt. Right. Because it also brings something interesting that hasn't really taken off like I maybe thought it would a year or two ago, but this app-driven format, right? XCOM uses the app on your phone or your tablet to run the opposition and randomize what's happening, and you as the players, play on a limited time scale and each of you having very distinctive roles, right? I mean, the squad leader and the commander and the researcher, and everyone has a job to do, and you have to work together to sort of win the game, and you're under high stress and high difficulty, kind of like the game itself, the video game itself. So it's really neat. The app-driven format is maybe not for everybody, but a good time, I think. This one doesn't see the table as much as I might like it to, but it's a great one for, we don't want to compete. Let's work together and let's overcome. Because it certainly makes you feel good when you win it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And obviously this one just goes along with other, because since co-op is not really something that I think of when I'm thinking of board games. I'm always thinking of competitive, like I have to be playing against the people I'm playing the game with. And this one goes like with games like Pandemic and actually Pandemic is the real one that comes to mind, where you're all on the same side.
Yep. Playing
against some external force.
Yeah.
That is.
I almost put Pandemic in this slot for cooperative games, but figured it was too on the nose for our time period, and I wanted to plug the idea of app-driven games too. So that's how XCOM edged it out. But Pandemic is in this category too. I think we've had a lot of fun with Pandemic as well, gaming out the way you win or maybe just not die.
Yeah, just try to survive.
the way you struggled, right. To struggle to survive.
That's right.
Yeah, XCOM is fun because it really is just they took the video game and put it into board game form.
Yeah, they did such a fantastic job capturing that feeling urgency. Of hopelessness and urgency that the video game gives you so well. They just fed it right into the board game. Because I remember the last time we played, I'm pretty sure we lost.
We probably did.
I think most plays of that game lose.
It was. I just remember going out there, and I think I was the squad leader, and I remember rolling the dice for my attacks, and
nothing's hitting.
That 99% missed. And I was like, no,
can't do it.
So, yeah.
Yep.
No, well,
XCOM,
the board game.
Yeah, I will say that I think you're right. There's definitely not a lot. I have not seen or heard of a lot of these app-driven board games.
No.
It reminds me of, there was a really old board game I think you got a long time ago. I don't know if you remember this. It was a Star Trek game where you played off of a VHS tape.
Oh, wow. Yes.
You remember that game?
What? I do.
It's some weird, crazy, like Star Trek The Next Generation style game where basically it's a 4-player, I think, and each player plays as your different officers or crewmen of the Enterprise.
That's right.
And some Klingon guy breaks onto the ship and hijacks it while it's in space dock getting repaired.
That's
right.
right.
Y'all were the only ones on there, and so you pop in the VHS tape and it plays the intro and gets you started and all that, and then it'll stop, or it doesn't stop. It goes into the whole you're in warp drive, and you're doing stuff, and every so often the guy will come on and make you do things on the video.
You're killing me with that.
Such a weird concept. But
well, and then there's also the ones where they start out co-op, like Betrayal on House on Hill or House on the Hill.
I've been wanting to get us back into that game.
So it's not a lying game, but it's a halfway through shift.
the game changes. Well, because it
That's
doesn't also have to be a deception game, because sometimes just one of your players turns into the bad guy.
Well, it's always like that, and that's like where you don't know you're the villain until you hit the halfway marker, where it's like, oh no, it turns out it was Bobby the Jock the whole time,
the entire time. Because Betrayal on House on the Hill it's kind of like that. Not, I guess it's rulebook driven, but not so much app driven.
Well, yeah, but I could easily see how that game could have a companion app to basically supplement, instead of having that huge book of like scenarios where it's like you have to go onto the Battleship style grid and be like, oh, we have Bobby the Jock, and oh, we drew the blood totem, so that does what ending and who's the villain now, and it's almost a game in itself, just figuring out what the ending's going to be. So
it may be quicker, but I tend to think that Haunted Hill will age better. Because the problem with apps, right, is eventually they're not supported anymore, and then where can you find them? And the app stores have to hold them, and a book is
always supported.
A book, exactly. You can't beat physical copy, which that's showing my age a little bit.
No, but I think that's a very it's in this digital era where all we ever do is digitally download games and stuff.
Yeah,
physical media is definitely something that I would say the newer generation doesn't appreciate as much. Yeah. I know you're an elder millennial. And I think Jake is on the younger millennial side.
Right? I think Jacob is a baby millennial.
I'm a baby millennial.
Yeah.
And I'll fight whoever says
I think I was
not.
1 year away from a Gen Xer, and Jake is 1 year away from being
whatever the next generation is.
Whatever the next generation is.
And true to form, I'm in the middle.
A Zoomer.
In the middle. The only other thing I'll say, too, on the app-driven games, I have one on my list to tie back to Risk. There is a Risk-like game. Someone basically looks like they took Risk. It's called Leaders. I think it's Leaders 2019 or something. I think it's a German game that I've seen on Amazon. I have it on my list, and it's like a Risk take that's got an app form. It's got an app-driven style to it. So you can do diplomacy secretly through the app. You do production through the app. It's got like a Cold War theme, so you may have, someone playing Khrushchev or someone playing Kennedy or, stuff like that, which has got an interesting theme to me from the historical view. I don't know how it'll play. It gets reasonably good reviews, but it seems to be an attempt to merge Risk with or update Risk with the app-driven capabilities. So, it's on my list. It's not terribly expensive, but that's one that I'm looking into to see how it might play.
Yeah, I just pulled it up.
May see that in the future.
It looks neat, and just at a glance, it totally looks like Risk with all the little soldiers on the different countries. Mm-hmm. So,
yep. So,
nice.
There you go.
All right, so that was your board game list. So, definitely a diverse bunch, and I totally get your logic. I know all of us did like our top fives. I get the whole, you've played too many games, you've been around for so long, how could you possibly pick a favorite,
Well, it's also that I'm terribly indecisive, and I'll overanalyze, as I think your audience might have heard, so I can't choose a favorite sometimes, so I'll tell you the ones I like best today, or the best examples of games I like, so that's going to keep going in the video games, but I'm definitely not proving you guys terribly wrong in the overanalyzing format, but hey,
it's definitely I think in a couple of episodes I've argued that whole over analytical strategy can be a valid form. I've slowly started to lawyer for you.
Well,
slowly.
I will say that new player, the newbie savant is a thing, and I almost never play as well on a game as the very first time I play. So over analysis usually doesn't serve me well, but it's another way. It's another reason it's another way that I get enjoyment out of games. I'm almost OCD about it, I guess. It may be a bit insensitive way to say it, because I have to break it apart. I have to obsess over it, and I won't move on until I've kind of taken it apart and I kind of get the mechanics and I see how it fits together and, see sort of the beauty of its design and go, if you wanted me to be a bit pretentious about it.
You always do tend to wind up diving really deep into the meta of games, where it's like you played it through and you had that fresh experience. You got to do your whole newbie savant thing, and then afterwards, when I'm going to say hopefully Erica beat you, Then you go to the forums and you're like, all right, how does this game work? How does it tick?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the internet's full of much smarter people than me, and so I like to see what's communities doing, optimal strategies. What do I think about that? But I'm a big fan of crowdsourcing strategy, and seeing what good. A good game, you'll always be able to identify a good game as having multiple reasonable choices, right? Because if a game is so unbalanced that there's only one right move every time and you win, that's not a well-designed game, because that becomes a predictable march. You want to have games that can evolve sort of dynamically, and so it's interesting to read what others have discovered about balance. And again, I'm not much of a math guy. I like to delve in.
Down, all board games are math, right? So.
That's right. Probabilities and statistics and stuff that I didn't do well in college.
Right. So a place you might consider checking out. I know you don't take too deep of a dive onto the internet, but on Reddit, r/boardgames. Mm-hmm. I've only recently started becoming involved on there, and I will say it's a really interesting community. And if you ever have a question or you want to like propose a random thought, people are really nice and open. Like, I never want to think people on the internet are nice, because usually I assume they're all salty trolls. But r/boardgames is actually a bunch of really nice people, and like I've posted random questions or been like, this looks cool, but I never thought I could get into it. And they're like, oh, here's an easy way to get into it, and they send me like links to starter kits and stuff like that. And they're just a really great community. So if you ever start wanting to dive into another board game place to get information and ask questions and bounce things off of a large community, I would definitely recommend Reddit. Mm-hmm. You can tell I'm showing my age as well, being that I'm new to Reddit. Right. So
cool. Yep.
But all right, board games. So why don't you start us off with what's the first one you want to talk to on your video game list?
Oh, let's talk about some video games then. All right, so. Let's go back to front this time. So I got started in video games, really. I mean, Mario and all that, yes, but when I first got a PC, one of the very first games I got was Command & Conquer Red Alert. I'd had a buddy down the road who did it. That's not the one I'm listing, but I'm using that to show that RTS has always been a big one that I've always enjoyed. It's a genre I pay attention to and enjoy doing. I kind of feel like the gaming world has moved on from it in some ways, but it's always going to be one of the classics to me. Going back to the old Dune. But my example for my first game is StarCraft 2. So super well designed. Had a great time with it. It's not exactly Macbeth or Shakespeare in its story, but it is very entertaining. It's got some compelling stuff, some great production quality to the voices and the people that put it together, and again, just a really well designed sort of asymmetric RTS. I think if you play RTS and you haven't played StarCraft, you're missing out. And I think StarCraft 2 is a really interesting embodiment, I think, of RTS and what it can do, sort of fast-paced competitive gaming. I don't play a lot of games online competitively, but StarCraft held my interest for a time, because it is so like, okay, I just got to get in there one more time and see if building an extra SCV gets me the extra minerals I need to get that Marine, and maybe I can beat that Protoss player this time. But yeah, StarCraft is, again, it's one of the granddaddies too of RTS.
It really is.
I think we've all got history with StarCraft.
Well, and I could totally see how this would definitely be something that go up your alley, because there are so many like optimum strategies for how to do like your specific build orders and stuff like that in order to be competitive either in the campaign setting or in the PvP setting online. And so like I could totally see you would just dive into that meta, and it'd be like Neo the first time he's like plugged in the Matrix. And they plug all that information in his brain, and they're like, "You want some more?" And he's like, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
He starts reading all the metas.
Well, and then there's a great, the mathematicians out there, and I never claimed to be very good. I don't think I ever got beyond Silver League in StarCraft, if anyone's familiar with how they did their rankings and their ladders. Certainly not at the level of any kind of pro gamer play, and those guys make my head hurt to watch. But I did enjoy it. There's a lot of interesting math to it when you consider the resource costs and the time to build, and what can you do and what can you squeeze into this amount of time because your enemy is definitely doing it. And certainly a human opponent brings a layer of challenge to it that the computer just can't do. And you get a bit of a high when you're playing it against a human and you're in it, right? You don't have to be, winning it is fun, but if you know that you're in it and you're competitive, and even if you end up losing at the end of it because you could just a little too slow, which I almost always am, but to sort of be in it for a few minutes, it's a great moment of in the zone play, and you kind of leave it with an adrenaline high, I felt like. So if that's not a bit too kind of oddball to say, like that's an interesting one for just getting a bit of a rush out of an RTS, I think.
Definitely a really great classic game, and don't knock that story. Say what is it, Jim Raynor and Sarah Kerrigan? That was one of the first video game romances I ever experienced, man.
Hey man, when 10-year-old me saw Kerrigan break out of the chrysalis, spoiler alert for a 20-year-old for a game that's old enough to drink, it was a huge mind blow for me, and you had to just be there for it, and so great.
Yeah, man. I mean, it goes from being like a romance to a revenge story to being kind of a romance again. It's like, I don't know.
I've hated few villains in my gaming and general media consumption life as much as I've hated Arcturus Mengsk.
Yes.
So yeah,
hey, it's all his fault. At the end of the day, everything that happens in StarCraft is Mengsk's fault.
That's right. Didn't have to be that way. Definitely. All right, StarCraft 2 specifically. So let's go in the vein of sequels. For your narrative RPG, I went with Baldur's Gate 2, and this is another one that's a bit older. Yes, I hear the squee of fanboys everywhere. It is a great D&D derived, and it's old school. I never played this edition of D&D. I don't think any of us did.
2.5, right?
Yeah, I think it's the D&D Advanced 2.0 in some parlance. But the old days when only humans could be paladins, and you had to dual class instead of multi-class, and
D&D's
it was
horrible racist roots.
I was about to say only humans.
There's something so charming about that. Not the racist roots. I take offense to that. It's not a racist game.
I know.
But the just the sort of raw simplicity of it, and Baldur's Gate glosses over a lot of that as a video game. If you ever get to play Baldur's Gate or its sequel, they got redid recently with the enhanced editions. Which I know some purists.
Beamdog.
That's right. Beamdog deserves a huge nod to that. I know some purists out there don't love them as much, but they're great updates, I think. They really do a great job of catching the old feel of those games. They're really great, top-notch games. Their stories I will stand behind, putting you in the shoes of a really epic story that goes, if you take it all the way to the end, is really cool. And really connects itself well in a way that games didn't do in those days. It's really one of the first. I think in this narrative RPG, like a lot of games that we love owe their roots to this, right? I mean, if you ever play Dragon Age Origins or Knights of the Old Republic, or Mass Effect, lots of sort of that BioWare RPG line, of course, sort of not exactly sandbox, which we'll get to in a minute because they're in here, but that sort of narrative-driven RPGs just have some really epic stories, and they all, I think, owe their...
It's almost like an Odyssey-style RPG kind of thing, where it's these grand, epic tales that sometimes span multiple games. Well,
that's right.
Usually span multiple games.
That's it. And you could, and that they carry over, right? Baldur's Gate 2, well, really Baldur's Gate as a series is one of the first ones that lets you carry forward, right? The first few levels are in Baldur's Gate 1. You finish that story, you export, import to your next one. It's something I loved for Mass Effect. Dragon Age did a variant of it because you don't keep your same character, but the story choices can, persist. that feeling of agency is just tremendous, and Baldur's Gate pioneered that, I think. And of course, I had to pick Baldur's Gate 2 because I've played very few games, even in modern times, that had as well defined and very compelling characters as Baldur's Gate single player narrative did. I mean, if you aren't quoting Minsk and Boo in your in some of your gaming quotations, then you're really missing out.
Go for the eyes.
Go for the eyes. Miniature giant space hamsters, and it's just great. Yeah, like I said, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of it, and I think its progeny have eaten up many hours of my gaming.
Its score of video game progeny.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, I can totally agree with you on this game. Like, fantastically written story, and then all of the characters just. And the fact that a lot of the characters from BG1 even carry over into BG2, so like they all had a level of character development in the first one, and then the second one just ramps it up to 11, and so all the characters have such in-depth stories, and I thought it was really great that your decisions kind of determine not only your fate but their fates as well. And so I thought that was just fantastic, and then the villain in 2. I mean, if you love to hate John Arenicus. I mean,
John
really.
Arenicus. Yep. So well voiced, well produced.
Oh, yes.
Again, if you love games like the BioWare line of RPGs and you've never played a Baldur's Gate, shell out a few bucks, give it a try. Baldur's Gate is a fun ride, and it's I don't think it's too deep in its it's deep if you like the numbers. But it's not so difficult to follow, as an old school D&D. It really glosses over some of the, or automates, I should say, some of the more esoteric mechanics from the old style D&D. I know 1,000 D&D purists are shouting at me right now. Shut up! I only got into this. I only got into D&D in 3rd edition. So
that game's it's old enough to apply for like retirement. All right.
So. Quite so. Drawing Social Security, I think. But yeah, Baldur's Gate. Try it out. Let's see. Continuing up the line, RPGs. So if you had narrative-driven RPGs, then you have sandbox RPGs. And this one, for this one, I've chosen Fallout 4, but I could have chosen any number of sandbox-style games. Usually these are Bethesda guys like Morrowind, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout 4. These are tremendously well drawn games. They don't, in my opinion, their narratives are strong, but they are not quite on the level of what a little more on the rails game like a Mass Effect can do narratively. Mm-hmm. But they make up for it with complete freedom. A total expansion of your horizons and what you can do in the game. Really just great. And I picked Fallout 4 because I love the theme. I've been a fan of Fallout since the isometric days, when it was more like Baldur's Gate than it is, in its original formatting. But the post-apocalypse world is just great. The sort of tongue-in-cheek retro 50s aesthetic is awesome. And I also enjoyed 4 because it is such a robust modding community now. The settlement development mechanics, you can really combine all that together and go be whatever you want in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And but yeah, Fallout 4 is a tremendous example of it. Even as old as it is, it's still got a great modding community that's still doing new stuff. I know you guys laugh at me, but just to plug, Sim Settlements is a great one that expands sort of if you want to be mayor in post-apocalypse, more so than the game makes it. Try Sim Settlements as a mod. Those are great. But the game itself is just very well drawn and such a great example of player agency that can lead you to multiple sort of end points. So.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever any doubt, and for either of us, that we knew that you loved that game. I think at one point, Jacob and I had like a tally going where it's like, how many times have we seen Philip log into Fallout 4 this week, And
right. That's what it came out to be.
I could totally agree with the whole, the main story may not be that robust, but just it makes up for it in just so much more content. Just every nook and cranny of that massive sandbox world has some ridiculous quest line or plot loop that's going through there. Like, I think of the robots that are manning like the colonial ship that they like make it fly and stuff like that, and I'm like, I randomly stumbled on it, and I was like, what is this? And I have to go talk to Captain Ironsides, and he wants me to help them get this ship sailing again, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Yep, right.
And then all the DLC, and then the mod community. Like, I remember, I don't think I took as deep a dive on this one as I did on Fallout 3. Like, I remember I bought all of the Fallout 3's DLC, and I played all of it, and the expansion stories and all that. And this one, I played through the main thing. But then by the time the DLC came out, I think I was a little burnt out on it. Like, it's just, sandboxes are a lot to take.
The problem I run into is you reach a level of burnout on them. Like, once, because as I said, I like to fully immerse, and so it's, when I play this, I have to go all the way through it. I have to do out as much of it as I physically can. So by the time I get to the end and I'm ready to start a DLC, I've really burned myself out on it. And again, because I'm slightly OCD about these games, I have to be at like a stopping point, like a natural stopping point, or else I have to continue. Like, I generally won't leave a campaign of that game unfinished unless it's got like a technical breakdown. Mods can cause that. But if the game is stable, I usually have to carry it through to the end in some way. But afterward, it's hard sometimes to muster I hit the end. The sequel's never as good, so how can a DLC? But the DLC on Fallout is really top notch. There's a lot of stuff there. If you're the kind of gamer who can let it slow burn, there's a ton there.
Yeah. I will say this was one of the ones that I think I applauded them for. Not very many games, like sandbox, like open kind of games, that this one did really good about having post-game content. Or like, once you finish the main story, there was still a lot of interesting stuff going on in the world. Like, one of the only other games other RPGs that I really applauded with this was Fable 2. Had so much robust post-game content that once you finish the main story, you're not just done and you could just go goof off and kick chickens. It actually had a lot of like major things to do after the game that were only available after the game. And so I thought this Fallout 4 had a lot of that too. And so I thought that was great.
Yep. No, it's great. The sandbox RPGs are a wonderful time sink. If you just want to see what's over the hill or what's in this cave, because there's always something there.
Another settlement needs your help, General.
That's right. Let's see. So number 2, I have XCOM 2. So as y'all know already, I talked about XCOM earlier, and this is really where it's at right now for me in what I term my tactical strategy. Games. So there's a ton of games that are in this genre. I sort of colloquially call them XCOM clones. When they pull something, it's almost like a really advanced chess game where you've got your soldiers on the board and you're gaming out your moves, and your enemy moves on their points, and they have powers that you kind of get familiar with, and are you just good enough to beat a superior force with kind of limited resources? It's a great the XCOM series generally, and these kind of games more, or I should say XCOM specifically, and these kind of games more generally, are great games for just, slow, think it out. Are you good enough to think your way out of this? And I think XCOM's a wonderful example of that. XCOM 2 is, I think, really where it's at. The War of the Chosen brings that up to 11 with some very high-powered enemies that really stress you out. If you're playing XCOM, you should definitely play on Iron Man mode. Permadeath is a thing. No saves coming. Otherwise, what's the point?
It's so hard.
It is very hard, but again,
don't make your family members soldiers in your company.
That's right.
Or else they're all gonna die.
Yeah, never put anyone you love into this game. Or maybe do. I don't know.
I'll say, was it War of the Chosen added those like motivational posters? And I think one time like Erica and Jacob wound up being on the motivational poster, and then like the next mission, I'm pretty sure that Jacob died. And I was like,
yeah,
man, we'll remember him.
That's right.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
At the Avengers, someone on the Avengers said the thing is not beautiful because it lasts, and that's really true with XCOM because nothing lasts. That guy that character that you've been cultivating will take a plasma bolt to the face in the next game when you thought his 99% chance to hit was a sure thing, and you will have to figure it out. And it's just a great example of it, that the strategic layer, the tactical layer, how they feed each other, and how you have to really be on top of your game in both layers at the highest difficulties is just great. Very difficult, but also very rewarding, in my opinion, to pull out. Once you reach a point in it where you're good enough to pull out a great win, that's huge, and you get a good feeling from that mission accomplished screen.
Oh yeah. This game definitely does a really good job of making you feel very accomplished, because the odds are always stacked so much against you. Because it's always like, oh, my little 4-man team has to fight 10 to 12 aliens, and it's like, oh boy, I hope we can beat them with our, assault rifles and grenades versus laser beams and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, especially, I love how the premise of XCOM 2 is that you lost in XCOM 1.
So appropriate. I think some fans were salty about it at first, but it's playing the underdog is how XCOM is meant to be played, and it's good to me that the story reflects it.
Oh yeah.
So,
they added,
XCOM.
They added so much. XCOM 2 is just such an aesthetically pleasing game.
it does look.
Oh, it's
pretty.
beautiful. It's gorgeous. That your brother's taking plasma bolts to the face was never so pretty.
Yes.
I stopped putting my wife in it because she kept getting mad at me letting her die.
Uh-huh.
I didn't let her die. I never let them die.
You don't let them die. They are taken from you.
That's right. They're taken from me. So let's see. All right, and then last one on my video games list is I'm showing Stellaris in my grand strategy genre. So I put this genre up as almost all the Paradox games. If you buy any games from Paradox, I'm thinking of Crusader Kings 2 usually. Crusader Kings 2 is a big one.
Hey, but they did City Skylines too, which is not the same.
There you go.
But Paradox.
Well, Heart of Iron. I know, Jake, I know you're a big fan of Heart of Iron. You got me into it.
Europa Universalis.
Europa Universalis is another one that's in this genre.
Imperator, I think.
Yes, Imperator, yes. Any time period in human history can be done as a Paradox game. They're basically huge spreadsheets, which I think people can kind of intimate enough about me at this point to know that I eat that up. But I picked Stellaris because I love the sci-fi aesthetic. It's a really cool, start with one planet, customize your own alien species, and it really has grown to a point where it can be any kind of thing that you want. Techno, robots, hive mind, insect creatures, or something more traditional, right? If you wanna try and recreate the Federation from Star Trek, you can.
Every time I play, I can't help but live out my Star Trek fantasies of boldly going where no man's gone before. So
human hive minds, human Xenos, let's go.
Yep. So Stellaris, great, and then such a great I know the community has complained and it's grown over time, but the AI still is difficult to make a good challenge sometimes because it is such a complex game for the AI to play well. But the game tries to overcome that with these crises. I have a great sort of tactical high as I was trying to maneuver my fleet around the Great Khan in the mid-game crisis as his fleet that was way overpowered to me, but not so overpowered that if I could trap him, I could destroy him. We're just trying to outmaneuver him, and then the endgame crises that really make you sort of see really how well you've been playing up to that point. It's a great time. Really get to build your own Death Star if that's what you're inclined to do. And it really has any kind of sci-fi thing can be sort of recreated with this if you're trying to do it. And I just love that I'm enough of a fan of sci-fi that this game loves all sci-fi fans, and it wants to give all sci-fi fans a little something. And so again, Stellaris is just a great game. It's really come a long way. The Paradox model is really interesting. I know we've talked about it a little bit
I've mentioned
privately.
It before that I like it, but at the same time I don't, because you get a game, and the game is basically like it's a really nice foundation for the 30 pieces of DLC they're going to sell you later down the line.
That's right.
And like, yeah, every time DLC comes out, they do give you an update, and they give you a little sprinkle of what that DLC's got. They're like, here's like 2 pieces of the 15 things we add. Now give us more money.
Yes.
So, but
well,
at least
they
don't like EA me, where it's like, I'm going to give you a completely broken game, and you're going to pay me for me to fix it for you. So
I can see the style of gamer that gets frustrated by their model. I confess I was a part of it for a long time, and it's still sort of frustrating to me because it's almost like a work in progress. Like it's an art project. A Paradox game is almost like an art project that's always being slowly kind of evolved. And it's really cool to me because the community evolves on this. They really seem to pay attention to their community and what their community wants to make the game better. And so it feels like if you are participating in that you're part of forming it.
Your voice is heard, and like you have a hand in making the game.
Right. The tragedy of it feels to me that by the time the game is sort of done and final, they're coming up with the next version of it. And that's why one of the reasons I haven't gotten into Crusader Kings 3 yet is because my heart is still with Crusader Kings 2, trying to really feel out all the things you can get out of that.
So what you're saying is I should wait for Stellaris 2 Electric Boogaloo before I start buying all the DLC.
Well, I mean,
or all the DLC
to be fair,
will be in Stellaris 2. So
to be fair, Humble Bundles are wonderful things for catching lots of DLC for Paradox games in one fell swoop if you're of a mind to. If you're not one to slow walk them and really play them actively, because a Paradox game is one that you play for a while and then you put it down and then you come back in 6 months or a year and you're like, I wonder what they've done to it since I've been gone. And you can kind of reacquaint yourself with it. So, yeah, the Paradox, the Grand Strategy games are a great time if you love spreadsheets on a board, which sounds boring, but there's a kind of gamer out there whose ears are perking up when I say that. These burn lots of my hours.
Yeah, not something I would normally say I try, but I've passed my hand at this game. I've always thought it would be really interesting to try playing this multiplayer with y'all, but at the same time, it's so large and, for lack of a better way to put it, rather intimidating. Like this huge
and also
game.
It's also not like it's not turn-based grand strategy. It is real-time grand strategy, which is when you play with someone like Phill, who's pausing the game every 5 minutes because he's got to get it just right.
You have to have some house rules where it's all right. You have to have a full quorum before you're allowed to pause, or something like that.
That's right.
But that is the downside to multiplayer in Stellaris is that it's all real time. So if anybody wants to, you can't really get a decent, well thought out strategy because you're always having to think ahead, real quick because it's always moving.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to justify, and it seems clear to me that Paradox wrote it as a multiplayer game. It almost seems as you play it, it definitely feels like Paradox employees loved playing it, play testing it and working through it together. But the tragedy of it is that it's hard to come up with 3 or 4 people who can commit the kind of time to a game of Stellaris that you would need. At least in our gaming group. I mean, you guys, jobs, me, kids, and job.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I could definitely see it being a lot, but I mean, thinking about it. I mean, there's some of my favorite YouTubers, they got together as a group and played Hearts of Iron. And so it was 3 of them playing it multiplayer, and, normally Hearts of Iron would not be my cup of tea, but watching these 3 guys work together as a team to, I think they all decided to, make a fascist regime, and they decided to, beat the Axis and beat the Allies, and they're like, let's do it, and they went nuts, and it was hilarious to watch that.
Well, and also the thing with Paradox games, if you're going to go with with their grand strategy ones, I watched people who there's mods out there that let you convert your Imperator game into a Crusader Kings game, into a Europa Universalis game, into a Hearts of Iron, into eventually Stellaris. But Stellaris is easy because you just take the factions that won global domination of Hearts of Iron and put them in space.
Right.
And it's Texas. My favorite one was I watched a guy who let AI play Hearts of Iron, but he made every individual state in the game a player. And then Texas won. And I was like, yes!
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw, y'all.
That's right.
Oh, man. The internet is such a wonderful place.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
Most definitely. It can be. That's why we keep coming back to it.
But yeah. So Snap, I guess that's probably all the time we've got. I know, Philip, we're really glad to have you on, man. I hope you've had a good time. I know we've enjoyed talking about your games. Lord knows we talk about you enough on this podcast that this was only a matter of time.
Yeah, I have to come. I have to set the record straight, and I'm pretty sure I just confirmed everything that was said about me. So there we are. But that's okay.
Hey.
This was fun.
We're
good.
Man. So, thank you all for listening. I hope you all had a good time listening to us kind of ramble on about some new and some old, mostly I guess kind of older games, but still, we're all about digging up new stuff. So, yeah, Philip, we're really glad to have you on, and maybe we'll have a chance to have you on again. So
thanks. Look forward to it.
Into digging up stuff, even if it means digging up our roots. Let's go.
All I've got is old stuff, so this is right up my alley.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, that's gonna be it for us, y'all. We'll catch y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.